The main impetus for the creation of such an Arab collective identity was the confrontation with an external power, European colonialism, and the related perception of oneself as a victim of colonial rule and imperialist exploitation. This central element of Arab nationalist ideology is, as far as I can see, the wish to constitute a strong community of Arabs and Muslims. Underlying this wish is the self-image of Arabs and Muslims as a community of victims of the historical and ongoing policies of colonialism, imperialism, and Zionism. The Syrian-born German academic Bassam Tibi described this attitude as a culture of defensiveness. The Tunisian intellectual Afifa Akhtar spoke of a violated collective consciousness, and Salman Rushdie once used the term paranoid Islam. All these are different expressions of more or less the same view or Weltanschauung which prevails in the Arab world when talking about the West. This Weltanschauung creates a kind of collective inferiority complex in relation to the West being seen as the symbol of modernity, technology, progress and strength, which produces both the uncritical tendency to copy the West as well as resentments and feeling of hate. I don't wish to say that there are no reasons to complain or to criticize colonialist or neo-colonialist tendencies or the politics of occupation and economic interests carried out by Western powers in the region. However, the form this criticism often takes is not only ineffective, it is, in my opinion, one of the biggest obstacles to progress and development in the region, as it distracts from the real problems of Arab and Muslim societies. To find these contexts of victimization, one mostly has to read between the lines, to seek out the subtext, to find examples of this way of thinking. And as an ideology which a lot of people find natural or self-evident, it is very hard to pin down, but let me try to do this using a couple of examples taken from Arab media.
Because there is two bands happened to the Almanar, France of Eutelsat, and Spain recently they banned Almanar. I think this band is not, is not objective or is not logic, or there is a political agendas behind it.
I am not really for banning Almanar. I am not. I think the best way to do it is you talk to them, you give them chances, you tell them, look, the way what you are delivering is not acceptable in our society. You have, give them options, and I think Almanar they will be keen to change their style. If they change their attitude and style, it's good for you because they have audience and they will listen to them probably more than they listen to anybody else. So if you can convince someone with extreme views, that's a plus. But if you ban the person and say, well, I'm not going to let you be seen in Europe, you're just basically closing down one station, you have other TV stations. So it doesn't work in my opinion.
The characteristic ideas and the ideology of Arab nationalism, namely to think in categories such as community, dignity, collective pride and humiliation, honor and shame, superiority and victimhood, is present not only in the Arab public but also in its media. The historical and common feeling of powerlessness sometimes expresses itself in extreme forms of anti-Americanism or anti-Semitism.
The Arab media is working regardless of what the West is thinking about, and the West have some doubts about some Arabic stations, but not all of them, because I think they are monitoring all these stations, and they know most of these stations don't harm the West, or they don't broadcast anything against the West, except, as I said, Almanar, it has a point of view that maybe the West didn't like. But in a way, they are trying to be as objective as possible. You can't be 100% objective. We have seen most of the Western media wasn't objective during the Iraqi war, during the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. And now we can see what's happening in Iraq and in Guantanamo, and we can see that the Western media is not 100% objective. So how can you expect from another country media to be 100% objective?
Well, look, I think that the first thing we need to recognize is this is a new phenomenon. It's an extraordinary phenomenon. When you think about what's happened over the past few years, it's extraordinary. And now people are routinely depending, for example, on Al Jazeera as a source of commentary, debate, the interrogation of power, and of course as an attempt to kind of squash the most outspoken commentary and political coverage on Al Jazeera. But I think this is inevitably going to fail. When you look at Al-Hura, which is a station created by the U.S., technically speaking, it's very good. And they have a beautiful opening scene with a black horse and so on. Nobody watches it. Nobody watches it. So Al Jazeera has been trying to find itself and to maintain its position. So far, it's been reasonably successful. It's still the dominant satellite station in the Arab world.
Here you see the cover of This picture is another side of Arab nationalist ideology. It is, however, not nearly as harmless as the first one. It is a depiction of Sharon as a murdering, blood-stained devil, which was published in the national liberal Egyptian opposition paper Al-Wafd. The often radical hostility against Israel is, in my opinion, another main motive within these constructions of collective identity. However, of course, you don't find cartoons like this every day in Arab papers. This picture has been published around the peak of the Second Intifada. So hate propaganda against Israel is in parts a result of the conflict.
Memory is an interesting group. I mean, they have some very competent translators. From a technical point of view, they're doing very good translations, mostly from Arabic to English. So as a resource, it's a valuable place to go to see what they might have translated, but they are, like all people perusing and canvassing the press, they're selective. And their tendency tends to be to reflect pro-Israeli perspectives. So you can't just depend on memory. Now, unfortunately, what's missing is a counterbalance. We should have access to a wider range for people who can't read Arabic. They should have some access to commentaries that appear in the Sharq al-Awsat, in Al-Hayat, in Al-Akhram, and so on. All these famous newspapers. On Nahar, for example, the Lebanese paper, which is so respected in the Arab East. But unfortunately, memory has monopolized a lot of that space so that there's no competing source of information. I hope we're going to see that, perhaps maybe with the English language version of Al Jazeera, we're going to see more access to a commentary which is not simply focused on voices of the radical wings, but is more reflective of Arab society.